Welcome to Wednesday Inspirational Book Lounge. I'm Anna Murby, your host. This season, we're reading Mephibosheth, A Twisted Life of Unexpected Grace and Mercy, the true story of a medically fragile child whose life became a living testimony of God's grace. This book invites us into a story of deep love and brokenness, revealing how God's mercy often shines brightest in the most fragile lives. Enjoy the episode.
Mephibosheth, A Twisted Life of Unexpected Grace and Mercy, by Chaplain Aaron. Read by Hubert Carl. Chapter 9. A Mouth Deformed. And the Lord said unto Moses, Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the dumb, or the deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Exodus 4:11. Split from birth. If we take a second to consider the roof of the mouth, there is so much that is taken for granted. That cheap toothbrush with a small dab of Pepsodent mint-flavored toothbrush that regularly adds to the daily shine has barely been given a thought. Mentally, not much consideration is given about the construction of our upper facial structure, even during a vigorous flossing. Only those few who have gone to college for orthodontist, or the couple of times you accidentally have an owie inside the mouth, does anyone take notice of the upper structure? It's a pretty amazing concept. During prenatal development, during that time where you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the womb, this miracle of the upper palate structure begins its formation. Your body starts out as a combination between two cells that come together by God's design. In a perfect world, your batch of 46 chromosomes will complete its task and you will become a bouncing baby 9 months later. If by some chance injury or some very bad chemicals are introduced into the mother's system, the womb will become anything from a torture chamber to a tomb. Let's be optimistic, though. How should it work naturally? In later stages of development, the primary palate and the secondary palate are joined together. This area is the front near the nose and the back near the throat. On the day one of development, they are separated, not joined. They are two pieces of puzzle coming together. As you are reading this, you no doubt are taking the tip of your tongue and examining the top of your own palate. There literally is a left side and a right side. That bump in the front is where they came together. Throw out the nonsense of evolution. Your development will happen in weeks. This precision that is known by science is the development of the upper palate. Upon full development, and at birth, a healthy child will have an open-mouthed, toothless grin, and a completely connected palate of tissue, cartilage, and bone that defines not just the ability to eat, but the facial personality of that new life. This is the miracle that can be anticipated. What happens if you are the defect? The one out of 1,500 that have a cleft palate. How does that fit into God's perfect structure of organized creation? The easy blame game. We have heard more times than we can count the quintessential question of the existence of God. If there is a God, and if He is a good God, why are children born with birth defects? That is so easy to ask that question. It's like throwing rocks at a church window. We see a child who has an obvious cleft palate. We see every other child is born normal. Did anyone ever think to give glory and credit to God for creating a normal, healthy child? Why is it so easy to throw rocks at a church window and blame God for the obvious answer? Did the mom do drugs, causing this child to be born with birth defects? Yes, of course. Now, do we shift the blame game on her problems and say that God failed her there? Why are we always stuck in the blame game and not the resolution that helps both mother and child? The lifestyle of the mother was already off track because of the lifestyle of her mother. We saw that in this family case history. Yet here is probably a redemption process within our hands. We can't do anything about the grandma, whoever she is. No one knows where the mother is today, so we can't assist there. But today it is 1983. We have a child in our hands, and it's time to physically walk forward in the healing process. rather than focusing on the natural retort of humanity to question a perfect creator who allows people to make imperfect decisions. We are allowed to make our own decisions to move on to the next step. Paul and Dale are at that next step, and they choose life. When Paul and Dale received a child, they received that child as their own. Do you remember when Mephibosheth arrived at their home? It was not a glorious homecoming, but it was a time of nurturing. A natural mom would spend hours getting to know every stitch of skin all over her precious child's little body. This was the same response. To see the defects, like the cleft palate, meant an immediate need that they would require medical attention, and this young boy was in need of a doctor. Needed repairs. If a child is born with a cleft lip, which is about 1 out of 1,000. If a child is born with a cleft palate, that's 1 out of every 1,500 children. We begin to understand the development of the palate as something that did not completely finish closing in the 3rd trimester, leaving the upper palate and lips still unconnected. This is 2 sides of the mouth that do not completely form together in those few weeks of complete development. The question now would be how to complete the process of what was never completed. A dozen or so more trips to the doctor's office at the hospital are immediately in order. Taking several children to the doctor is a regular part of Dale's ministry to the new family. That large green 4-door tuna boat has become a regular fixture outside of Dr. Stone's office. As the primary pediatrician for this small hospital-like facility nestled into a rural home, Dr. Jess and his wife became part of the ministry family more and more each year. He was their general physician for the standard care and glad to refer to Kaiser or others in the medical community. His understanding of Mephibosheth was complete with all the ministerial medical details. After a medical examination, it was very standard to refer this medical condition to a surgical specialist in the field of facial repair surgeries. Both Kaiser Hospital on Douglas Boulevard in Roseville and Sutter Memorial on L Street in Sacramento had their own maxillofacial surgeon available on staff. Dr. Stone had already written a referral for initial consultation. This would allow Kaiser specialists to access the incomplete palate formation and decide on the future structures. The doctor at Kaiser began immediately with a careful look at the X-ray slides that were provided. This would give him an understanding of the congenital face differences that would require treatment. This treatment was available and recommended if a child was about 8 to 10 months old. Mephibosheth was exactly in that range. It would be necessary to investigate the facial reconstructive needs with a few more clear slides on the important areas. Even before the question of the cleft lip could be addressed in the facial reconstructive surgery, the need for the palate to be correctly brought together is paramount, the main goal. This would require some unusual skin grafts that the orthodontic treatment would provide for a complete and correct repositioning of the area. Dr. Claire Conniff, the chief executive of the Cleft Lip and Palate Action, had stated the maxim: cleft treatment is not a single operation, but a lifelong pathway of care. To this day, the ideology rings very true, as the goal was not to make your young life a future supermodel, but to give him the ability to eat and breathe normally. The process was going to be uncomfortable and obviously painful for the poor child. After much discussion and consideration was given to this unusual boy with an unusual name, his maxillofacial surgery was understood, designed, and planned for the day that would come when he would receive a new facial structure that would give him a very smart look for his teenage and adult life, should he live that long. How do you spell that name? Every doctor and medical appointment started with the same curious and odd conversation. Welcome to the hospital. Welcome to this clinic. Welcome to this doctor's office. I'm the receptionist. I'm the nurse. I'm the x-ray technician. I'm your doctor today. You said the name was Mibo. My apologies. How do you spell that name? You could see the smile on Dale's face each and every time. You knew that it would be just a matter of minutes before the person on the other side of the conversation would look up to that California tan face with beaming warm brown eyes and a broad straight smile that was just waiting for the obvious question on hand. She knew each and every time that a curious person who was in the teeniest way awake and halfway curious would want to know, what is the name Mephibosheth about? This month's conversation on his behalf would include doctors, nurses, technicians, and everyone in between. Some were just playing at being courteous by asking what the patient's name is. Most of them were truly curious and had to ask, Mephibosheth, that is an interesting name. What is it all about? That was the normal introduction to an amazing conversation that the mother of this beautiful child, with a twisted body and a testimony of mercy and grace. Once again, it was her privilege to explain to each individual staff member of the amazing tale about the noble King David, who adopted his friend's handicapped son. After explaining the history of the Bible out of the Old Testament, she would go on to the next beautiful step of a redemptive gift that was given to us. We are given the opportunity to become the children of God through the free gift of salvation through Jesus Christ. If someone else did not pay the price for all the wrongdoing, the sins of our life, we would still be stuck owing the debt. Yet because the debt is paid in full, we can now just simply ask for this gift of mercy and grace, courtesy of the offer given by Jesus. Dale was very intuitive. She could see when someone wanted more understanding and when someone was only being mildly curious. What was interesting was that in all this curiosity, there were several who were not content with a simple explanation. In fact, their old grief came back up and raised a nasty head to the surface. They themselves were still stuck in the rut of what we know and call the blame game. Yes, that was a regular conversation as well. If Jesus was that caring, why does all this stuff happen? If God is so all-powerful, why doesn't He stop it in advance? He could have fixed the bad development in the womb. He could have stopped the mother from taking drugs. He could have stopped the grandmother from having a wild experimental lifestyle. Would look up with an unhappy stare, waiting for a justification. When they would see that warm smile waiting, they were not expecting a gentle response of truth. The blind man. Dale explained how Jesus replied to this issue. You see, she began to explain, when Jesus was here 2,000 years ago, he came across the same question. One day, Jesus had just finished teaching a group of people that met at the temple area, and they saw a blind man. In fact, the statement by everyone was that man was born blind. The immediate question that was asked by the good disciples is exactly the question that many people ask. Why was this necessary? The exact question from them was, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? This is the exact question everyone asks in social services. Why did this wrong happen? An anomaly of birth defect? The fault of the parents' genetic code? Was it the problem caused by the parents through known or unknown causes? Why does this have to happen? 9 out of 10 times, yes, 9 out of 10 times, we're looking for a justification to leave God out of the picture and stick with the blame game. Jesus doesn't go there. They'll continue by relaying the words of Jesus when he said in the book of John, Jesus answered, Neither has this man sinned or his parents, but the works of God should be made manifest in him. It was very simple. Damages happened. But in this blind man's case, he was gifted the opportunity to be the biggest testimony of his time all the way to our time. For in that simple explanation that was given in this chapter from the book of John, this adult will tell now how he was born blind, and now how he was able to see. His parents answered and confirmed that he was born blind. The neighbors confirmed that he was born blind all the way to the one day that Jesus healed his eyesight. Even the health officials from the local medical college of their day knew him too. He was the boy born blind. The new testimony was completely unheard of at that time, as many are born with congenital birth defects every day and every century. This man will tell his whole community that it wasn't medical science that gave him his sight. It was the gentle, kind words from the Creator of life himself, Jesus, the Savior of mankind, who gives light and life to all. The only thing they asked this blind man was one simple question. Do you believe in the Son of God? That is the only question he asked us in our first conversation, in the same book of John. It's kind of well-known and famous verse, John 3:16, that says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." This invitation invites the one who was born spiritually blind to be free of the darkness and see the light of light. Why was this man born blind? So that you and I today could understand the first conversation of eternal blindness and the free gift of eternal life. Why was Mephibosheth born handicapped and need of a super conservator more than a nurturing caretaker? Mephibosheth needed the love of a mother and father that would be an example of true love to those in need. This is a place where the answer is found. Where physical handicaps do exist, here mercy, grace, and nurturing love did much more abound.
Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to come back next week for another installment of Mephibosheth, A Twisted Life of Unexpected Grace and Mercy.